Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to day three. That's right. Third day's a charm. Day three for whatever we called this. I don't even remember now, but it is day three for Facebook Lives for those of you that are money ripplers, especially those of you that are looking to create passive income right now. So I know many of you are starting to jump on. They're live on Facebook stream and excited to have you here. By all means, start throwing in the chat, start saying hi, say who you are, and say where you're from. I'd love to actually hear where around the guys rather where around the country you guys are. So definitely go ahead and type that in the comments or the chat right now, so I can kind of see who you are and just say hello to you. But for those of you that are watching the recording, you can chat all you want or whatever, but we'll respond later. But definitely welcome you guys out because day three is exciting. We definitely saved. I know for some of you might think the best is for last. Now, that's not to take away anything from days one and two, right? Days one, we went to the cash flow, like how to find and free up cash. What can we do with that? Where can we find money from essentially nothing? And many of you heard my story about how I was over $1 million in debt, had to dig out with no money and no credit. And so I had to create something from seemingly nothing. And that's definitely what we had to do here today. So that was day one. Day two, we talked about that max ROI infinite banking concept, right? Like, how do you use infinite banking to now double dip on the investments that you do? So, how can you get your money to start paying you twice? So, always a great discussion, always a fun strategy. As we mentioned, that doesn't get you for the financial freedom, right? It's a great vehicle to help you amp up your returns, but it's not the thing that does it. The thing that does it is here, day three. And that's what we're talking about today is how do we create at least 10,000 a month of passive income? So for those of you starting joining live, how many guys actually want to create at least 10,000 a month of passive income? Go ahead and put that in the chat right now. If you don't, just say, nah, hate it. I hate money. I hate passive income. It sucks. I hate freedom. I'd like to be more in bondage. I like to live off the government cow, whatever you want to call it, right? Those kind of things. So if you love passive income, which obviously I do, definitely type that into the comments here and let us know. All right. So I'm going to start sharing my screen because I want to really help you guys dive in and understand how this works. So not only am I going to give you strategies, I'm also going to give you real life scenarios, real case studies of people that have done it, right? People that have actually been there and done that, and still doing it today. Besides me, but those that actually been our clients that have gone and implemented these things to get these kind of results. And the cool thing is, you'll see that several of them have actually used this in a way to not just create passive income, but there's also been cash flow improvements. And they've even used the infinite banking strategy to help enhance everything they're doing because it's one big picture. It's how you get everything to work together, not just these things operating and standing alone. When you get this stuff to really work together in your plan, guys, you're unstoppable, right? So, and that's what we want. And so here we're gonna jump right in right now. Let me make sure I hit the right button so you can see. Let's see. What do we like? We like me in the corner? Nah, we'll put me off to the side. So we don't want to have that be too much of a distraction because then I'll be wondering where my head ends and my shoulders begin. Right. Okay. So let's do this right here. All right. So actually changing the title of that. Here's kind of inspiration. This is a Facebook post I did here. This is towards the end of 2021. And I kind of keep this because the interesting thing is the person that made this comment is a multimillionaire real estate investor, awesome guy. I just love him to death. I get to see him 4 times a year when we go to certain mastermind events, and he's just a stud. But understand this guy has made millions in the real estate game. And then when I talked about how a client, we were able to show him how to increase his passive income by 19,000 a month within the next year, he's like, show me. And that's the thing because many times people do talk about real estate investing, right? But often it's like creating another business. And that's the thing. This guy is great. He's created an amazingly successful business in the real estate game, but he has a real estate business. It's not passive income. Okay. There's a big difference. Passive income is money you do not have to work for. Active income is money that you're working for actively. So you might be in the real estate game, but if you're actively trying to make money in that space, you're not really truly financially free. You still have a very, very high paying job or business, right? And we're talking about creating real passive income. And I'm not, like I said, we're not talking about creating another side businesses or side hustles where you have to work your tail off. These are actually things you can do that do not take up all your time and attention. Doesn't mean you turn your brain off because you still have to have that stewardship mentality, but it does mean that when you are actively managing your own money, it doesn't have to be as scary as you think, and it doesn't have to be as time consuming as you think. And no, I'm not even talking about an Amazon business, although you could do that too. Again, that could be active, right? I love this Warren Buffett quote: "If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die." And so we want those multiple streams of income coming in. That is the only sure way to creating wealth. That's the only sure way to having true, not just financial independence, but also combined with that abundance mindset, financial freedom. Because I'll tell you, I mean, when we saw 2020, how many of us really thought that the government would say, you know what, your job or your business is now non essential? You need to shut down because we said so, right? Many people were caught off guard with that. We even had clients that were furloughed for 2 years. One client, actually, not even in this case study here, but he was furloughed for 2 years. Fortunately, he hired us in 2020. We were able to get his plan together, find some investments for him to do, even though he was really technically unemployed, and got enough passive income to come in to pay for his basic monthly expenses. And then, funny enough, right when he didn't need the money, what happens? He gets his job back. They finally hired him back. Now, everything he makes from his job is just gravy that he's now using to invest and create more passive income. This is why we need multiple streams. I don't even care if you have a business you think is bulletproof, you still need multiple streams of income. Even for me, even if Money Ripples stopped, I want to make sure I still have multiple streams of income. And I already, of course, shared the story with you in the first day about my dad, right? He did everything right. He was the ultimate penny pinching saver. He was the guy that you could seriously, as my wife had a friend that told her one time that, you can stick a penny up his butt and he'll make Abraham Lincoln squeal, right? That kind of thing. That was my dad, cheap to the worst degree. And he saved everything he could, paid off his debt early. Yet, when I sat down with him as a financial advisor, he couldn't even retire for more than 5 or 6 years without getting Social Security and other things to help him. I don't want you guys to be in this place. This is why we want something different. Okay. I shared this on a podcast just recently. In fact, maybe it was just yesterday. This podcast came out talking about, real rates of return on the stock market and how financial gurus are even mistaken. Now, Dave Ramsey, he put on Twitter, so it's there. He said, saving only $100 a month from age 25 to age 65 at 12% growth equals $1,176,000. Everyone should retire a millionaire, right? That was kind of my impression of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, sort of, But, anyways, everybody should be a millionaire. Couple problems with this. Well, one, he didn't do the answer. He didn't even do the math right. Right. This is the financial expert you got to be following because, hey, the real answer for $100 a month at 12% return for 40 years is actually 979,000. Good old Dave was $200,000 off. So guess what? $100 a month doesn't make you a millionaire. The other problem is 12%. Is the stock market really paying you 12%? Heck no. No way. Never has. In fact, the 30-year average you'll see right here is about 7.74%, depending on the day. So if the market's a little bit higher, it might be 7.77. That's a good number, right? 777. Or it could be 7.6 or 7.5 the next day. This is the S&P 500 index, right? This is not talking about when you invest in that index. Even if you buy the fund, right? The actual spider fund, you think, oh, I bought the low cost index here, the ETF. And you buy that, you still have to pay a little bit of fees. So maybe if you're lucky, you get 7.5%. I just saw somebody today, somebody had quoted them 8%, but they were invested in like 10 different categories, all of which usually don't hit as high as the S&P 500. So I told them, I said, that guy better change that number to 6%, because the truth is, if you have a 401k, you're lucky to get 6 or 7%. And so, here's the problem. What happens if you save $100 a month for 40 years at 7.5%, not 1,176,000 like Dave says, but $283,000. 283,000. That's a little bit different than 1,176,000. That's $900,000 off, guys. Now, that's only just changing the number from what he had said by 4.5%. That's it. 4.5% made almost $1 million difference. It's huge. Compound interest can work against you if you're not actually earning enough, right? Here's the problem with that. That 283,000. Now, if you go off of traditional financial advising, and I'm talking about even more updated, they say that you should not be pulling off more than about 3% a year from your mutual funds when you retire. If you don't want to run out of money, no more than 3%. I would say this: if you're younger and you're trying to do it by the time you're 40 or 50 years old, or even in your 30s, that should be 2%. But let's just give the benefit of the doubt, go for 3%, right? Because you don't want to run out of money with inflation and everything else. Well, 3% of 283,000, guess how much that is, guys? Well, 300,000 would have been $9,000 a year, right? 9,000. Yay. Whoop-de freaking do, right? So really you're looking about $8,000 a year. Oh, and if it's in an IRA or 401k, guess what? You got to pay tax on that. So if you save $100 a month, yay, you get to live on about $8,000 a year. Oh, but what does that mean with inflation? We didn't even factor that in, did we? In 40 years, do you think 283,000 is going to be worth anything? Even with conservative returns, guess what? I just ran this number. If you're lucky, it's somewhere around 1,500 a month in actual, 1,500 a year of actual income. 1,500 a year. How many of you guys can live on 1,500 a year? Type in the chat. I'm just curious. Any of you guys can do it? Anyone? I don't know. My kids could barely. Actually, my kids couldn't do that. I know how much they eat. That would be more than their grocery bill right there. So $1,500 a year. Think about it. You saved $100 a month, $1,200 a year to live on pretty much the same income per year, especially after you pay tax. That's the problem, guys. Whatever you have to save per year in the stock market, whatever you save per month is about what you could probably live on per month in retirement. There's your big problem. So remember, the real rate of return, not that much. So does 3% really matter, or 4.5%, based on what Dave Ramsey's saying? Heck yeah. Because even if it's 10%, saving 20,000 a year. So say you're max funding your 401k for 30 years. I know many of you do this. We talked to a lot of you that are max funding your 401k right now. Well, guess what? If you only earn 7% because you're actually not earning as much as you thought versus 3% difference actually makes a $1.6 million difference, or about 80%, 79% difference. That means you're expecting 3.6 million, but now you're living on 2 million. That put that in perspective again, living on 3%. You're thinking, yay, I can live on, if I put in 20,000 a year, I can live on, well, tomorrow's dollars, that won't be worth as much, $100,000 a year, right? But here's the problem. That's about a 25,000 a year lifestyle, by the way. The problem is you're living on actually $2 million a year. 2 million is definitely not the same. 3% means 60,000 a year. Divide that by 4 if you factor in inflation. That means you're living on like 15,000 a year. Oh, yes. I saved 20,000 to live on 15,000. That's what I wanted. Not what we want, obviously. Here's to give you another perspective. Some of you that want to do this in 10 years or less. I'm curious. Any of you want to do it 10 years or less? Say yes, that's me. Okay, here you go. If you save in a mutual fund making 7%, again, that's pretty realistic. That's more realistic than what most financial advisors are quoting at 8, 10, 12%. 7% to do this. If you want $100,000 a year of cash flow, and just so you know, I'm barely factoring in inflation here. $100,000 a year of cash flow for 10, in 10 years from now, you got to save $19,400 a month into your IRAs. Or in other words, you got to save about $230,000 plus per year, so you can live on $100,000 a year from your IRAs or 401ks. Good luck, guys. Hope that works. Now, here's the thing. What if that was only 10%? Now, 10% is kind of like our baseline, what we try to produce for our clients. Well, 10% is a little bit better. If you can get 10%, that's about $5,000 a month you need to save up if you want to retire in 10 years to live on basically about $8,000 a month. So it gets better, much better than trying to save $230,000 plus a year. It's easier to save about $60,000 a year. But guess what? Just add 2% more to that. You save yourself about $1,200 a month in what you have to save. Now you're saving about $3,700 a month. Now, I know for some of you might think that's a lot of money anyways, and it is. And there's ways to even do it a little bit faster than this, depending on what your situation is and where the resources are. But if you're just starting from scratch, from zero, here's your answer. If you're starting from zero, this is what it would take. Much more doable if you can earn at least double-digit returns. This is why the life insurance policy by itself doesn't work. This is why mutual funds by themselves don't work. It's virtually impossible to have a real, true life of freedom where you're not living on a very, very tiny, tiny budget. It's almost impossible to do that. So now I've depressed you. Here we go. So what's the solution, right? Let's talk about what we do for our clients. First, one of the biggest things we look for are resources, right? If you haven't done this already, on our website, there is a passive income calculator, which actually calculates this for you to see how much you can create in the next 12 months. I had somebody that said, hey, I showed putting in $50,000, or $50,000 of savings, and it spit out $5,000 a year. Does that mean I can make 5,000 in the next 12 months? And the answer is yes. If you earn 10% on 50,000, that's 5,000 a year. Just so you know, easy math. If you want to hit your goal, say your goal is 100,000 a year, easy math is add an extra zero on the end of 100,000, and that's how much cash you would need to have to do that. So if you want 100,000 a year, get $1 million of investable cash to create 100,000 a year, passive income, not touching your principal, just earning returns on that money that can keep paying you every single month, quarter, year, whatever. Okay. So when we look for resources, just like the passive income calculator tries to identify, we look for ways to, one, get lean. This is just like I mentioned before in our day one, we talk about cash flow, right? How do we find and free up cash? How do we ensure that we're still being a wise steward of our money? We're not just blowing through and creating so many expenses that we're just chasing after that number. Because what happens typically is as you have a rise in income, you also have a rise of expenses. This is called Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law says that whenever you have an increase of something, just like the law of the vacuum, it tends to try to fill that space. So even if you have an increase of time, maybe free up time, say 2020, all of a sudden you get to work from home. You're like, yes, I've got more time. And what happens? In a matter of months, you feel just as busy as it was as you were just driving into the office. Same thing. Someone pays off a car loan. They're like, yes, I freed up $400 a month. Whew. And then the next thing you know, 6 months later, why doesn't it feel like I have $400 a month? This is why we got to capture it. So get lean means we want to make sure you're not living in a cardboard box. You're not having to cut out all happiness and fun out of your life. But it does mean let's be as a wise steward as possible to keep those expenses down, right? We don't want to keep increasing those so much that it makes it almost impossible for you to get out of the rat race. So that's get lean. Number two, get liquid. This means get your money available to use, right? What's liquid? Having money in savings is liquid. Having it in like life insurance is liquid. Having it in your company's 401k, not liquid, right? You can't get to it unless you either get fired or you change jobs. I don't recommend that strategy necessarily, especially the first one. Don't get fired, please. But it makes it really tough when you try to fund that 401k and that's locked up. Okay. So that's what I mean by get liquid is how can you make sure you have money liquid available to use to generate passive income? And then get out. There might be places you need to get out from. You might have been riding the stock market wave all the way down and it's come back a little bit, hasn't it? I mean, just a little, not everything. Here's the weakness that people have. I'm not giving investment recommendations. This is my disclaimer right now. I'm not an investment advisor. I got rid of my securities licenses back in 2005 and I never want to get them again. Okay. So I'm not giving you investment advice, but human behavior says this. And I watched it with people that, I taught how to trade stocks and options and people that were really emotional with their money. What would happen is whenever the stock would start to lose money, people hang on because they don't want to lose anything. So what do? They hang on. They ride that entire wave all the way to the bottom. And then sometimes they get emotional. And when it hits the bottom, that's about the time they get out. And that's when they actually lose money. Instead of riding it all the way to the bottom, say, hey, it's started to come down a little bit. I've made lots of money over the last, really, if you've been in the market, the last 12 years, you've made money. Okay. Why not take those profits and run? That's one idea. That's what you could do to get out. I actually seen somebody who had money in a crappy life insurance policy that's tied to the stock market. Now he bought it in 2010. So the good news is he actually got lucky. He actually got lucky with his timing and the market went up almost the entire time he had that money. Now he's starting to lose money because the market's been down well over 10%, even as of today. It was down over 20%. Now it's kind of hovering right around like 12, 13% for the year. That's still bad, right? So he's already lost about $20,000 in his account. Well, what if he was able to capture that money and move it to a place where it wouldn't lose money, where it's protected, the principal's protected, even guaranteed would be better. hey, we can move that money over to another policy, and then we can take that money and start to invest it. By the way, he actually wants to retire in the next year. So we want to get that money working for him pretty fast, right? So that's what I mean by that. That's another way of getting out. Getting out could also be getting out equity from your home. We've had super high prices. The market still, even though it's gone from a crazy, insane seller's market to where there's bidding wars to now just a plain old vanilla seller's market. So it's still a seller's market. Prices have still been going up in most of the pockets of the country, but it's not going up crazy. Your value of your home, if you own a home right now, you likely have equity. Can we tap into that equity and use it to generate passive income? Right. I'll talk about some examples of that today too, but that's something you can do as well, depending on what kind of loan you get. So, just so you know, we're going to fly through this. I'm going to give you some examples right now. If you've got questions and you don't want to forget them, just type them in the chat right now. And at the end, I'm going to answer those questions. Okay. So be sure to do that right now. But let me give you some real life examples. All right. All right. So here's the type of investments that we look at doing. There are more than what's on this list, but these are more the common ones that we stick with because we like things that are more certain. We don't like to gamble with our money. I believe that the very first and foremost rule is kind of like Warren Buffett's rule, which is don't lose money. So I'd rather have a return of my money before I worry about having a return on my money. So we always want a return of our money first. Then we get a return on our money because we don't want to lose that just because we're trying to gamble. Don't believe in the whole high risk creates high returns. A 90% chance of losing does not mean you have a 90% chance of winning. 90% chance of losing means you have a 10% chance of winning. Do not take high risks with your money, take lower risks. And you might even look at this and say, well, this is different. These are alternative investments. Well, they might be alternative, they're not the mainstream. But in many cases, a lot of these things can actually be more protected and have better control of what's going on than even putting it in places like gambling in the stock market or gambling in Bitcoin or anything like, all that kind of stuff. Where most people are riding waves and gambling with their money, we try to protect it by real assets. And then those assets not only are protecting us, but they're also generating regular, stable, predictable income. All right. So, number one, turnkey rentals, turnkey real estate. All this is that you don't have to go hunting for the properties. You're not searching around on the MLS trying to find that good deal. Because guess what? You're competing with thousands of other people doing the same stupid thing. No. What you do is instead, there are companies called turnkey real estate companies. Some are good, many are not. Okay. This is why we've vetted people in our network to find the people we've refined over the years to find the right ones that actually get you good results. So there are some good turnkey companies out there, and there's some that are kind of lame. All right. So turnkey companies, they help you find the property. They help you get financing on it, whether you need to get a mortgage or not. And then they also help you property manage it. They get you set up with a property manager, whether it's themselves or somebody else, that you now no longer deal with the property. So your job is to buy the property and then collect the rent above and beyond paying for your mortgage payment if you have one and paying for the property management fees and taxes, insurance, and everything. I just told somebody today, given that woman example who had $50,000, I said, it used to be if you're buying it with a mortgage, it used to be that if you drop down 50,000 bucks, you make somewhere at least between 400 a month with the good companies, right? 400 a month to maybe 600 a month. Now that's probably more like 400 to 500 a month, just depending on the deal. Not as good as before, but still decent. That's still a 10% to 12% cash on cash return after you've paid all your expenses. That does not include any appreciation. That doesn't include the fact that you get tax write-offs, and it doesn't include the fact that if you have a mortgage, the renters are paying down your mortgage for you because this is net after the mortgage payment's paid. So they're technically paying down your mortgage for you. I always like to use the example because it's been around for 4 years, but I have a property in Memphis that over the last several years, I put $32,000 down into it. Over the last 4 years, it's paid me about almost 100% now with the cash flow from the property and from the equity paying down the mortgage with no appreciation. Now, if you add the appreciation on it, it adds another 200%. So I've made 300% total return on a property I've owned for 4 years. Not guaranteed, right? And we had, of course, a great market to help with that appreciation. But the great thing is that even now, I still make almost $500 a month net profit. That's almost $6,000 a year from just 32,000 bucks. Or to put that in perspective, that's like making like another 17, 18% a year on my money, right? That's nice. Okay. So that's the kind of thing that we have there. Number two is lending. Lending is where you're essentially taking your money and you become the bank. You're lending your money to somebody else. They pay you a return. I had a client recently where he's decided to try out with one of our lenders that's out in Maryland, and so he was a little bit nervous. But the guy bought a property. He bought it way under value, and even after he put all the renovation in it, it was still well under value. And so we want to make sure that typically when you're lending money, even with the after costs of building it out, it's still not more than 70% of the value of the after repair value, as they call it, ARV, right? So you're basically, you're only lending them less money than what it would be worth after they're done with it, significantly less. Well, he said he'll take about 8 months to do this whole project and then sell the property. Flash forward 5 months, property's done. They sold it quickly for more than expected. He made all of his money back. So he got his principal back. He had lended him about $200,000. But he also got on top of that about an 8% return over just 5 months. So he was pretty thrilled making that short of money in just a half a year, right? So things like that. So that's where lending. You can actually be the lender. You can actually lend your money for somebody else to do the work. Funds or notes. Notes are things where you can again be the bank. I talked about in the previous session here where you could buy a land, right? You could buy land for a cheap price, turn around and sell it to somebody on what they call terms, right? Basically, sell it to them, have a note where they have to pay you for it. So, like for example, I had a piece of property, it was $9,000 of raw land that we bought it for, sold it to another person for 25,000 because we were able to get it a good deal. We sold it to them at the actual retail price, so what people were paying for it. 25,000 we sold it for. Now, I didn't just get the 25,000 up front. I mean, that's always great too. We don't mind that. But we actually said, "Hey, we'll be the bank here over the next, 5 to 10 years. You can pay us back with this much interest tacked onto it as well." So they're paying us principal interest payments to the tune of about $350 a month, right? So cool. We get that money back and we're making good cash flow on something that we only paid 9,000 for, but they're paying about $350 a month for several years till they pay off the 25,000 plus interest. All right? So that's what a note is. It's just like when you get a mortgage, it's a note. Funds sometimes invest in those things. Sometimes those funds also invest in lending money to investors that are just trying to fix and flip properties. There's lots of different funds out there that you can put money into and they'll invest in different things and then you'll get paid back. Even one of our investors, he invests in multiple types of investment properties. So he kind of diversifies his own portfolio. If someone says, "How do I have to really pick? Can I invest with someone who's already diversifying in different places like commercial real estate, like business commercial, and maybe some self storage, and maybe they're doing land too, and maybe they're doing multifamily apartment units. Can I just diversify in that?" Yeah, that guy's got a fund that he diversifies in, and each always tries to target between 10 and 12% every year on his fund. Some years, there's a year like around 2020, he paid less. Other years, he's paid more. It was like 15%. So it just depends. And then there's syndications. Now, syndications is where you pool your money together with other investors. But instead of just throwing it and buying stocks, right? You're actually business owners. You're on the same corporate entity. So you guys are all partners in a deal. And you go and buy an apartment complex or you buy into a self-storage unit. And I don't just mean one unit. I mean like the whole complex, right? It could be oil and gas, like mineral rights, land and things like that. It could be in assisted living, for memory care and things like that for the boomers that are getting older, right? It could be for all kinds of things. There's even syndications for hotels, if you want to, not the hotels that maybe are based on a lot of, the typical tourism and events, which events got hammered in 2020, but maybe like the boring hotels, like the Holiday Inn, things like that you can actually invest in, but not by yourself, but with other people. So you don't have to come up with all the cash and you become a partner in that deal. We even seen some for like car washes recently, things like that. So that's what syndications are. And they'll pay you varying rates of return. Some will give you a baseline. A lot of them will give you a return called what's called a preferred return, which is kind of like their minimal debt type of commitment to you, right? They're saying, "Hey, worst case, I'll pay you at least 7 or 8% a year upfront, like every year." Some of them, a lot of them in our network are like 10, 11, sometimes even 12, which is always nice to see. We like those too. Actually, I saw one that was 13% for an oil one. Those are great. I mean, that's kind of like the, hey, this should be hopefully, I say hopefully because anything can happen, right? There are no guarantees, but that's where they're saying contractually, we're going to pay you X percent per year on your money. And then in some of those cases, they not only pay you that return, but they'll pay you more on top of it. For example, we have one guy, he makes it really simple. He doesn't give you all the returns on the investment. He keeps some of the profits, but he says, I'll pay you 7% a year right up front. And then after 2 to 4 years, 2, 3, or 4 years, when he sells it, then he pays you back a 5% per year bonus on top of it. So say, for example, it's 3 years, you put in $100,000. Yeah, he'll pay you $7,000 a year broken up quarterly, right? He'll pay you every quarter and total 7,000 a year. But then after those 3 years, he then gives you not only gives you your $100,000 back, but then he throws on top of it 15,000 more dollars, which means in total, your 100,000 actually made $36,000 in 3 years, or 12% per year, right? Um, some of them are very simple like that. Others just depend. Some of the self storage units we see, they try to aim for like a 15 to 20% overall average return, even though most of the returns might come on the back end. So just so you know, this could get dizzy because in our space, with our people we've referred to, we have over 20 different operators, right? The good news is when we work with clients, we try to narrow those down based on your objectives. Because if someone says, well, hey, I want cash flow right now. Okay, well, good. Well, then we're not going to do that growth investment that you have to wait to get paid the bulk of your money in 5 or 6 years. I just actually interviewed one of our old clients for the second time, maybe the third time actually on our podcast. Recorded the interview yesterday. We'll air it probably in October. But actually, no, we're airing it next week. Sorry, we're airing it actually next week. And she even mentioned, she said, yeah, a lot of the syndications I did, in 5 years, they doubled in value. So she's like, I doubled my return. If I invest 100,000, by the end of those 5 years, I consistently pretty much made about $200,000. Again, markets have been good. Anything can happen. Some of those I'm sure did better than double. Some of them did a little worse. It, kind of averaged out. I just tell people don't even guarantee on that. But here's the fact is that even if it took 6 or 7 years for that money to double, that's still way better than what most people are ever hoping to get doing their usual retirement accounts, isn't it? And even better when it's paying you now versus waiting till you're dead. you know, so that's a syndication. Franchises, you can actually go and invest in franchises, not the Krispy Kreme donuts, nothing like that. I'm not talking about, buying another McDonald's. What I'm talking about is a franchise that you may not have even known was a franchise. Just businesses or small businesses that seem like service-based businesses. They could be gyms and things like that. They could be all kinds of things. But there are franchises you can actually invest in. And if you have an IRA, some of these, and not to mention most of these in here, you can actually use IRA money to invest in. So if you have money outside of your 401k right now, maybe sitting in IRAs, there's some things you might be able to do, even if it's not liquid. Partnerships, another one. Like I mentioned, like when we did land investing, I didn't do the land investing. I partnered with somebody else to help do all the work. I financed it. They did the work. We split the profits, and I get cash flow, and they're happy too because they make money off of the work they're doing. But they're not using their own money; they're using mine, right? So we have this partnership. Those things can be very profitable. Sometimes it's speculative, sometimes not. We tend to stay away from more speculative opportunities. We like consistent, predictable income. So that's usually what we go for. So that's what we're talking about here. So partnerships can be actually investing in real estate, but it's something where you're working at together. It's not like an investment. It's a partnership where you guys share in all the profits together. All right. So let's talk about how our clients are doing it. Here's R&D. This does not stand for research and development. This is just a couple. I want to keep their situation anonymous. Anybody who publicly shares it, we don't mind that. But if they don't, we want to keep it very anonymous. Here's what's cool. They came to us originally. They said, hey, we got a lot of money in stocks like Google, Facebook, things like that. We're worried that the market might go down. This was actually beginning of this year, which it started to go down. And they said, we're wondering what to do. Well, guess what? They sent in all their numbers. They used that cash flow optimizer that we gave as a gift in day one. They filled that out. We looked at it and we said, listen, we can actually free up about $3,800 a month in loan payments by consolidating and doing some things. So we did that, freed up almost $4,000 a month there, getting what was their number for cash flow that they needed was $22,000 a month. We brought it down to $18,000 a month. Then there was some tax savings. I put $5,000 to $10,000 a year. We're still waiting for the final number because they're meeting the CPA right now. But from what they had said in a follow-up interaction, it's probably closer to more like 20 to 30,000 a year. So much bigger number than 5 or 10. But again, I like to be conservative. I don't like to overestimate anything. But tax savings on top of that. So already we're pretty much looking at least 60,000 a year that they freed up. And we also helped them sell their rental. They had a rental property that wasn't producing as good of a return as it could. It had equity in the property, like I mentioned before, about getting liquid and getting out. Well, they had money stuck in that property. Well, let's pull that out, move it tax free into another property, and improve their cash flow by $2,000 a month just by getting rid of that rental and putting it somewhere else. So now we're already over about 80,000 plus. And of course, guess what? Moving out of stocks, some of the stocks have about 5 million. Like I said, with the 5 million, if you want 10% basic return, drop to zero, that gives them another 500,000 a year. Just depends on how much they want to keep in the stock market. And they're still liquidating stuff slowly and starting to invest in different places. So already for them, they're already about 6 figures a year. They're looking to go even beyond that. They're even looking to do a podcast interview soon. They just want to get more money decided in what place they're going to put it in, just to say, hey, this is what we've actually done. But in total, as I said here, conservatively, if they actually invest the money they have and get out of the markets and out of crazy stocks they're gambling in, that's could be about 600,000 a year in 1 year they could create there. Here's another woman here, DA. She had 650,000 to invest. She did some of that into oil investing. She did a few hundred thousand there. Actually, a quarter million, I think it was, or maybe it was 200,000, one of the two. It's generating about 32,500 a year for her. She also invested in debt funds, like I mentioned, funds, 27,000 a year, and another real estate fund that she's doing at 16,500 a year, bringing the grand total to 76,000 a year. So, when we talk about 10%, 650,000, usually that's 65,000 we would tell our client. But based on the decisions she made, she's actually about 11,000 better than what we were predicting. So again, we like to underpromise, over-deliver. We're not investing any of this money ourselves. We don't ever take people's money. We're just simply helping connect you with deals that we vetted. Doesn't mean they're guaranteed, but we do try to make it easier for you. KW here, this is not Keller Williams, just so you know, had about 270,000 savings. Keller Williams would have a lot more than that. 27,000 a year, because again, 10%, refinancing home with a HELOC, that was 17,000 a year net after the payment and everything. So he was able to make another 17,000 a year on top of the money he was able to pull out of equity. Remember, this is what I said. The cool thing is if you use your home equity right, you can actually get this passive income to pay your mortgage payment and maybe even have an extra left over, so that you might even say, wait a minute, this is almost like having a paid off mortgage. I'm not making a net payment on this anymore. In his case, 17,000 more than what the payment was. We also had him pay off a few leases. So that freed up $4,000 a year. We're like, hey, just take some extra cash, don't invest it, pay off these leases that have a low cash flow index, total 48,000 a year. Here's another guy here. This is actually one of my clients down in San Diego. He was an interesting case because he was like the Dave Ramsey disciple. I mean, this guy, he was awesome. And and most of my Asian clients, like they're raised very much the saver mentality. They do such a good job saving, they try to pay off debt. They're amazing, right? They're raised in that kind of environment from their family. Always taught that from the beginning. So, Dave Ramsey, really, he should learn more from some of my clients here. But here's his plan. For Henry, he said, I'm going to take my money. And he's like, I've got all this extra cash I'm throwing into my two mortgages that I have left. He was debt free other than two mortgages, one on this house, one on an investment property. Now, this investment property, this rental was only cash flowing $200 a month. So $2,400 a year, yet he had 700,000 of equity in it. 700,000. That means he's making like a 0.3% return. Okay. Not to mention his house. He was accelerating, trying to pay off the house. Well, I said, well, if we pay all this off, what are we left with? Like what's the actual payments we free up, right? Because he's paying extra on it. So the paying extra doesn't really free up money. I said, well, what's the actual payments we'll free up here? Not counting tax and insurance that you'll still pay for. Found out it was at $4,200 a month. I said, okay, $4,200 a month. That's really $50,000 a year. And you're going to do that in about 6 years on the trajectory that you're on. I said, or you could sell this rental property that stinks. Even though I know it's your first property and you have an emotional attachment to it, if you sell it off, move that equity into other properties, even if you got 10% return. And I know he could have done better, but as I said, even if you got 10% return on this, $70,000 a year, not $2,400 a year. And remember, in 6 years, as long as nothing went wrong, he'd be debt free, freeing up $4,200 a month. Here, moving the money over out of this property, he would net over 5,500 a month. Okay, big difference. Okay, in fact, it actually is better than what he would have just paying off his mortgage, all of his mortgages in 6 years. He would have in 1 year more than that. He also had money in equity of his house. I said we can even use equity in your house too. In fact, if we refinance to a 30-year fixed at a low rate, which it already was about the same rate anyways, we get that low rate down. That lowers your expenses, gets you out of the rat race faster. Now he still loves his career, right? He's in the medical profession, loves it, doesn't want to quit it, has a passion for it, and so we're not going to make him quit. But it's always nice to know that you have all your bills taken care of, even if, again, the government, and he lives in California, you know how that goes. The government says you got to stop working. He knows he's taken care of. Finally, it took a while convincing his wife because she really loved that property. He finally says, "I'm selling it, and now we got to move it." I said, "Great, that's a great problem to have." So right there, I was like, "Man, I mean, even if we could leverage everything, we could really make you probably close to almost 100,000 a year with all the equity you have. But even if we don't touch the house, and that was what we decided, we're not going to touch the equity in his home. We're just going to sell that investment property. Still net, 68,000 a year more than what he's currently making right now. That's huge, right? That's tremendous. So it finally made sense to them. They decided to do it. Plus, they're worried about the California market tanking, which I would too. I don't trust the California real estate market ever. So here's a guy I actually put on here. This is the Colonel, Dan Markert. He's been on our podcast. I just recorded an interview with him yesterday, so it hasn't been released yet. This one will release next month in September. He just gave an update. At this time, when he did the first interview back last August, he just barely hired us, right? Retired as a colonel from the Army National Guard in California. And he's like, "Hey, I've got a good chunk of money. What can I do with it?" We got that money invested. Plus, he even cashed out some equity and started to use that. He's netting, even after the increased payment on his mortgage, he's netting $11,000 a month right now. Okay, so pretty awesome. We've had other people, that have done stuff. We had another guy we had on recently. He was a rancher, and he came on our podcast, and he's getting himself right out of the rat race right now. He's getting all his money deployed in different places, equity from his property, able to put it to use. We've been working on this for years, and finally, it's paying off for him and his wife to the point where now they actually have their goal is 10,000 a month, and they're getting there. They're actually getting there above 10,000 a month. And now we're saying, like, well, gee, can we keep that going up? Can we keep it going? So lots of possibilities, lots of ways to do it. If you have money, it helps. Okay. We've even had people with a few $100,000. They're like, "Hey, I've got 250,000. Great. We can make 25,000 a year off of that and have that start to generate more income." I actually have a guy coming on the podcast here soon that was kind of a situation. He was he was just starting out in his profession. He's getting some money built up, but he wasn't quite there yet, right? But he still wanted to have passive income. He wanted to have that extra certainty. Kind of like another guy we had on our podcast, Louis Visco. He was on our podcast several months back. He works for Hollywood. He works for industry. And if you've seen a lot of the Netflix movies and things like that, a lot of other movies, he's been the guy that's worked on it. Well, during COVID, man, that stuff shut down big time, didn't it? I mean, they didn't know what was going to go and how it was going to work in Hollywood. Well, he had several thousand months coming in to help ride that wave out, so he didn't have to rush to the next crappy job in Hollywood. Especially, some of those shows are just ridiculous, right? He's like, "Hey, I get to pick my projects. I can figure out which movies are worth working on and which ones aren't." And that extra now 4,000 a month that's coming in is helping him out. So again, there's lots of ways to do this. I'm going to come back to the original challenge I gave you 3 days, really 2 days ago, right? Is that you got to be aware of your numbers. You got to know where you're starting from, where you're going. This is why I mentioned, even if you're trying to figure out how much passive income you create, great. We have the passive income calculator you can use on moneyripples.com. Change your mindset around money to be more an abundance perspective versus the scarcity perspective. Deny that saver mentality. Or if you're a spender, reject that in a way to say, "Listen, instead of being a spender mentality, how do I get that money instead of blowing it and it's gone? How can I get that money to actually pay me back again?" If you're a saver, instead of just accumulating it like a squirrel that only gets 76, that loses 76% of their nuts. Remember that statistic. Instead, how can I get that money paying me back? And so it's consistently always paying me. And of course, do what's right for you and your family. This is more than just you. This is what can actually help you create in your life, right? I mean, this is something that gives you a legacy that you can actually pass on, not a legacy of scarcity and a legacy of survival, but a legacy of prosperity, a legacy of abundance, something better. That's what this is really all about. I had a client where they're a couple, they're a good hardworking couple. They're kind of real, what's the word for it? I don't want to say grassroots, but just salt of the earth type people, right? Just good people. And for them, they're always in that survival state. Now the good news is we got them to the point where they're generating another 4,000, now about 4,500 a month of passive income. It's just about that point where they can pay for their expenses. The cool thing is they're trying to teach their kids to do the same thing. Some of their kids are a little bit older. They're like about 20 years old. They got some other kids who are younger. They're really trying to pass on that that lifestyle, right? And that not just lifestyle. They're trying to pass on something different than what their parents taught them. Just like another couple we have that's now expats in Mexico, right? They're homeschooling from Mexico versus being here in Utah. Like that kind of stuff. Like you're teaching your kids something new, a different way of life, a different way of living, and a different way of seeing money. That then just imagine that ripple effect it creates because it not only helps your life and you can help bless the people that you touch, but it also allows your kids to create a much bigger ripple effect that goes on beyond you. You create a true legacy, right? So that's what I mean. Cash flow creates freedom because it creates more options in your life. When you have more options, that is when you have more freedom. So here's the gift we're giving you guys. And then I'm going to open up for questions. In fact, you have questions, start typing them in. Here's the gift. And we're going to put the link in here. We are giving you all access for a month to our Wealth Accelerator Academy just for tuning in and learning this stuff. The great thing with the Wealth Accelerator Academy is that it's an online interactive academy, right? So it's got a lot of the education, even deeper than what we went into today. So videos, and we break them up in small little videos and bits. But it also includes like monthly calls with us, with myself and our coach, Craig Feldmeyer, who coaches all of our clients. We join the call as well. Danielle joins the call because she's just a rock star and she's always here. But that's the cool thing is that this Wealth Accelerator Academy allows you to be able to do this. Even if you don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars, if you're just trying to start out from getting a good foundation, this is the kind of academy that you'll want to be involved with. So we're going to get you access to that, access to those videos. Danielle will get that there in the share in the comment section, that thing, whatever that thing is called. All right. So everybody say thank you, Danielle. Okay. All right. So now we're going to move to the questions we have. So we got the link to the calculator there. I know Danielle's getting everybody signed up for the light. She just gave the thumbs up. So you're good there. All right. So one of the comments or questions on here says, is TIA CREF an IRA company? Yes, it's considered a custodian, right? That's a common one that most people use in the traditional sense. However, if you're just trying to do mutual funds, that kind of company works great. If you're trying to use a self-directed IRA, right, an actual self-directed one, where you can choose where to put that money. So you believe it or not, you actually don't have to invest with a financial advisor. You don't even have to invest in mutual funds. You can invest in almost any place you want with an IRA, other than things like you can't buy wine, like wine collections with it. Trust me, people have tried. There's certain types of things you can't do, but almost anything you can buy with an IRA. Now, there's some investments I wouldn't recommend. Some investments like oil investments, right? Like some of those you lose the tax benefits. Buying turnkey real estate, we generally don't want to buy with an IRA, although you can, but you lose a lot of the tax benefits that keep that money coming and going out, with a tax advantage income. Because with real estate, you get tax advantages because you can depreciate, which means you're writing off losses because your structure, the property, the actual structure, the house or the whatever it is that you buy actually loses value. The only thing that actually gains value in real estate is the land. So you can actually depreciate that, which offsets the money you're making in cash flow to where you can pay little or no tax on your real estate income. So you don't want to be putting that money in an IRA because you want to get all those tax breaks possible, right? IRA, if you put a property in IRA, you lose the tax benefits and you just get taxed normal ordinary income tax, which is higher than passive income tax on a property. Tia Cref, yeah, I wouldn't use that if you're going to self-direct it. There are other companies out there. Companies like the big one is like Equity Trust. That's a very, very large company that's out there. It's kind of the 900-pound gorilla, but they might be more expensive than some of the other subsidiary companies that are out there. So depending on what you want to do, you could definitely do that. All right, great question. By the way, other questions, keep them coming. Like, what other questions you guys have about passive investing? How you use money, whatever. Right? Other examples that maybe you guys need to help fill in the gaps here for you. So, oh, and Danielle just put in there. There's the free access to the Light Academy. It's just right there, moneyripples.com/strategies. So that's pretty cool. So I like how she does that. Usually when I do links, it's like HTTPL 23 4.1. I don't know. It's horrible. So at least that's easy to remember. Moneyripples.com/strategies. Right. Okay. So we got another question here. Says we worked at a university and they supported our. Oh, this is probably dealing with the Tia craft. Sorry, I can't see your names when we're using StreamYard here. So you worked at a university and they supported our IRA, so we have free money. Awesome. Yeah, if it's money that's not locked up in a current 401k, right? If it's not locked up there, you can access it. The If it's an old IRA or like an old 401k that's now available, or an old, in your case, it probably wasn't it probably wasn't an IRA. It was probably, or a 401k. It's probably more like a 403b if you worked at a university, something like that. Um, that's the kind of money you can actually get out. If it's an old one, you can actually get that money out and self-direct it. That did just remind me of something there. Oh, there is one exception. If you do have a 401k and it's locked up, there is one exception. You can call up, well, you don't really call your employer. It could be calling HR, but as you know, HR people really don't know anything for the most part, but you could try, and they might point you back to the company that has your money, like Tia Cref or whoever it might be. And you can ask them, based on your plan, do they allow, and I quote, and you can ask them this, do they allow what's called in-service distributions? In fact, I'll even type that in here because, oh, I can't comment. So never mind. In-service distributions, that's IN service distributions. You can ask them, do you have that available? Usually if they do have it, most of the time they don't, but if they do have it available, it's because you're over the age of 59 and a half. I had one client, thank you, Daniel, for putting that in. So I had one client that actually had, what was it, $400,000 in their 401k. Just so you know, this was in about 2010 when I was working with him, right? And he had been saving in his 401k since 1985, like January 1st, right when the average American was able to start using 401ks. He jumped on that bandwagon, right? Actually, it wasn't even a bandwagon yet. He was an early adopter of that bandwagon. Jumped on. After 25 years, he was putting in tons of money. He's like, I got 400,000 bucks. That's crap. He's like, I put in fact, he even did the averages. He found out his average return was like 2% a year on his money in his 401k with the match, by the way. So he's like, I want to get that money out. So we asked, and he was 60 years old, asked, they said, yes, we allow in-service distributions. He got that money out. He had to leave in 3,000 bucks. They told him you have to leave in 3,000, but he can get all the rest of the money out. Now it does get taxed when you pull that money out, but that, it's going to get taxed anyways. Pull the money out, invested it. He ended up buying over $1 million worth of real estate properties with that actually it was 300,000, not 400,000. So it was $300,000 he used to buy about $1 million of real estate property. So needless to say, he was pretty excited about that. Cool. One person commented, said, I read somewhere that self-directed IRAs have limited insurance. Are you familiar with this? And can you go over this? Limited insurance, I would imagine, are you talking about liability, like limited liability? Because if people do sue you, yes, they can get self-directed IRAs, or any IRAs for that matter, if that's what you're referring to. That's where I talked about yesterday, that really the only place that has protection where lawsuits and creditors can't get to it is either your 401k. That 401k is actually protected by law, or your life insurance. Anything else, anywhere else you have money, doesn't matter where it's stored, somebody sues you, they could say, hey, you've got assets, I want it. And they can literally have it taken out of those accounts. So really there's only two places you have protection. The 401k, which it's so protected from lawsuits and creditors that even you can't touch it. You can't even get your stupid 401k unless you borrow from it. Or there's the life insurance, which gives you more protection. So yes, self-directed IRAs, when they talk about limited insurance, there's definitely no protection over losing your money from that standpoint. But when it comes to liability, it is limited. But you can lose all your money in a self-directed IRA. In fact, I've watched people do it. When I taught people how to trade stocks and options, there was actually one guy that lost 90% of his self-directed IRA in literally about 3 or 4 days. Because he wanted to options trade. And when you options trade, it's even bigger swings than the stock market. Needless to say, it was a big, huge piece of humble pie. He actually became a better investor Well, I should say trader, stock trader after that, or options trader after that. But oof, it's horrible. Uh, Another person asked, another question here says, how much to start, Chris? Well, if you're doing the Wealth Accelerator Academy, nothing. We're giving you that as a gift. If you qualify to work with us one-on-one, work with our coaches one-on-one, here's the deal. We want you to have at least 200,000 of money that could get liquid and get out, right? Whether that's home equity, whether that's in savings, whether that's in mutual funds or IRAs, places like that. Why? Because we want you to earn at least double the return within 12 months than what you pay us. So typically, it costs about $10,000 to work with us, one-time fee to consult. The more money you have, doesn't matter. We had somebody who said they had $1 million to invest. I'm like, well, great. You're going to get charged by your financial advisor at least 10 or 20 grand per year for doing nothing with your money. They're just riding waves and hoping it works out for you. Or we're actually getting you way better returns, and it's not ongoing. So it's 10,000 to work with us, but the only way to qualify is you have to have at least 200,000 of access to cash that we can use. And I'm even saying home equity, at least 300, 400,000, if that's all you have. That would be ideal. So then you can net profit still double whatever you pay us. I do that because I just don't want people to whine about it. I want people to say, make my money back, because that's stressful for us. We want to make sure everybody gets awesome results. It's kind of like Doctor Strange. If you watch the first Doctor Strange movie, he's like, he only wanted either like the really cool cases or the ones that he knew he could be successful with. He wouldn't take the high risk cases. That's kind of the same with us. We don't want somebody to hate us, saying, oh, I didn't get the results. That's why anybody we work with, as long as they do something, they get results. And we can pretty accurately predict how much you get, which is why we do the passive income calculator, because if that number is over $20,000, sweet. Even if it comes in under 20,000, I have seen a few cases where we found money in other places to be able to get that up over 20,000. So it might still be worth a consult call with our team if that's the case. But if it's over 20,000, then that pretty much means, yes, we can get you awesome results, and we can get you better than what most people hope for. Most people hope that if they invest 10,000 into their IRA, if they're really lucky, they make 10%. You made $1,000, and we're saying, hey, we hope you make at least $10,000 more than what you pay us. So that's how much it is to start. But again, if you're not sure, or you're on the fence, or if you're just not in that place, just start with the Wealth Accelerator Academy. You'll learn so much there. Same education we give our clients, just not the one-on-one assistance. But I'll tell you a secret right now, because the Wealth Accelerator Academy is building the membership. The people that actually join live, like you're doing right now, the people that join live kind of get one-on-one help, because many people aren't brave enough to ask a question, even if they type in the chat, or they even come on the call and just ask. So if you really want to take advantage of that and have my advice on your situation, kind of like what we're talking about here, or even our coach Craig, where he's been he gives all people all kinds of advice. It's a great way to be able to get our one-on-one time and attention in a group setting. So anyways, in fact, it's the third Wednesday of the month that we do those monthly calls. So good time for you guys, because that means in a couple of weeks we're having a call coming up. So you get to join us again, and maybe not so late at night, but you do get to join us again. All right, other questions before I let you guys go? You got to type fast, because it takes so long to get to me. And so I'm going to end up wrapping up this call pretty quick. All right. Well, I didn't see it come through, but I know you guys have questions. Of course, we'll be responding to the comments anyways on the Facebook post. But guys, appreciate you hanging in there. Again, this is the big thing we're trying to do, right? Is that cash flow is what creates freedom. How do you find and free up more cash? How do you save money, whether it's paying off debt and consolidating, whether you're trying to save money in taxes? We gave you some cool tips there. Whether you're trying to, improve your cash flow by passive income, whether you're trying to get double dip returns. I mean, imagine with the passive income, you're earning at least 10% plus adding another 2% plus on top of it by using the infinite banking strategy. Guys, I mean, there's just nothing out there that competes with that. Nothing out there that really gets you those kind of results. So again, we're always here to serve you. That's why I keep doing it, why I'm financially independent, and I'm still here doing this, even right now, where my wife looks through the glass and says, when are you going to make me dinner? Right? That's why we're here, because this is the ripple effect I want to create, and I want to make sure you guys keep getting those ripples going through your life and that it ripples out from you and through your family and generations beyond you, as well as your community and across the world. That's the ripple effect we're here to create. I hope that you guys also become one of our 1,000 people, 1,000 clients minimum by the year 2030 that are financially independent, like many of the stories we just shared today. I want you to be that person too. So guys, thank you for joining us today. Make it a great